Okay, Death Battle Season 1 brought Existence, Death Battle Season 2 brought Peak Kino Raw Fiction, Death Battle Season 3 brought more Existence along with Blue Apron ads. So what's next on the chopping block, boys? Well, bad news if you hate purple.
How do I get this off me?
I don't know why they decided to do an entire visual overhaul, but it looks neat, it's nice, and it took me a while to get used to it. I don't know, I thought the old visuals better suited the over-the-top nature of Wiz, Boomstick, and the fights. In some aspects, I still do think it better suits the show, what with the Suicide Squad aesthetics reminding me more of an edgy underground cage fight rather than fun times with Jizz and Broomstick. Then again, the old visuals were absolutely products of their time. I see this and think of how Death Battle started getting big around 2012, and I get scared that I might get dorklied. Anyways, you know how it goes. I'm here once again to throw out my stupid opinions that most people have about the show already in ranking form. Hooray! Same rules as usual. Animation mainly matters unless the analyses are either really good or really Rogue versus Wonder Woman-y. Who wins or who loses doesn't affect my overall opinion unless argued poorly by their own research. No outside material. I'm not here to debunk Boomstick's breathing patterns. And most importantly, all the rankings are solely based on my own opinion. You know, imagine after I gave my introduction spiel, I just stopped the video right there. Like, wouldn't that be crazy? Oh. It has come to my attention that I made a severe mistake, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I don't deserve to be defended. My goal was to entertain and to be as factually correct as I possibly can, and ultimately I failed. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, I want to apologize to everybody for when I said that Cammy versus Sonya was the worst looking sprite fight, clearly oblivious to Venom vs. Bane's existence at the time. I promise to be better, and thank you. Oh my god! Okay, before I get into my existential nightmare, I have to be upfront with you guys. The matchup isn't that bad. Both of these characters are antitheses to the heroes that have indirectly wronged them and then just took up villainy. I mean, it's the first line of the episode even, so don't go around saying that this matchup only exists because Bane's angry power-up juice is also named Venom. How do you think Ben would feel about that after he admitted that was precisely the reason the episode was greenlit, son of a bitch? So the analysis. So the fight. Before I get into angry gamer mode, I want to clarify that this fight animation was done from start to finish throughout a single night. Now, I would say that's impressive. In fact, you know what, sure I will. Good on you, Kaias, I hope you're doing okay. But I'm sorry, I look at this factoid and yeah, I can tell. In my opinion, this time, this is the worst looking sprite fight of the show. No probablys thrown around anymore. I'm pretty sure we're at rock bottom here. It tries to be so dark and so edgy that it forgot to be legible. The black background with Venom's black suit. God, I miss Vader versus Doom. And just when you at least hope that one combatant would be visible, no, allow me to introduce motion blur and allow me to a camera can't even move 2 feet without cranking the aperture, let alone in combat. I'm sorry, and I know I'm going to exaggerate, but this is physically painful to watch. The blurs and camera movements are too extreme. It almost gives me a headache when revisiting it. And as for the approximately 3 seconds of animation I can make out, it's filled with janky cuts and so many stills. The pacing is in shambles, and there's so many freeze frames and shots of characters just standing around. When it's not being an assault on my senses, it's an assault on insomnia. I could pick apart moments to look at, but the very nature of how this was animated just doesn't let you analyze it, at least not without a fight of its own. But I can try. Venom sounds more like Carnage than Venom. The other Venom is just a GIF slapped on full frame with no transitions, just a hard cut. And the death is, you know, at least pretty okay. So yeah, I don't like being overly extremely negative about something like this, but this was just a visual nightmare that can only really be suited for these two characters. And that's just the YouTube version. They had to revise it for the platform after the original RoosterTeeth version got a decent amount of flack. Well, it can't be that much worse. Alright, things got a little too exciting that last entry, so it's about time we begin to unwind. At first I thought sleep aids would help with better quality sleep. You know, stuff like melatonin or Z-Quil or I don't know, a comfy mattress or something. But who cares about that? Screw Attack and RoosterTeeth banded together in 2017 to give us Sub-Zero versus Glacius anyway. Some say that Vix is still in shambles to this day.
You know, I could review this, but what is there to say? Analysis portions litter in obvious ice puns, which is as entertaining as it sounds. Hardly. Wiz calls Boomstick fucking weird, which, I mean, yeah, it was funny, but also a little too funny given the rest of the material in this episode. I mean, when you look at later seasons, Wiz canonically has inflation porn on his computer, implies to have a crush on a character that for a decent run in the show is, and talks about puberty and teenage girls not once, but twice in the season after. But no, licking Glacius is where you draw the line, huh? The fight isn't much better. I mean, I don't have many downsides I can think of aside from how slow it can be, but it's just so devoid of anything good. I mean, it's nicely animated sometimes, but the boringly standard interactions they have and Sub-Zero's random voice clips being tossed in there frequently throughout just to have him say anything at all, I'll give them credit. They tried to make something worth an iota with what little there was to work with, but it's so transparently middle of the road, and there's almost no reason to return to it. Sub-Zero's fake out at the end too is like, what? No, you mean the Mortal Kombat character won? But it led to a pretty good recreation of his fatality, so that's cool. Oh, damn it. The bright side, though, is that I can just move on immediately. So, see ya. Oh, right. Forgot about the other boring episode with nothing to discuss. Batman Beyond vs. Spider-Man 2099. I gotta hand it to him. This is the best episode to feature Batman Beyond and Spider-Man 2099 so far. There's a Boomstick dad joke in the analysis. Piss off. Let's see here. The fight is short, has very little going on, features a lot of skyscrapers and aerial fighting that's kinda cool, albeit a little slow, has a very short confrontation on the ground, and has a death that's pretty alright, but kinda just happens and ends the fight abruptly. This is just Beast versus Goliath again. To be fair, this episode is leagues above that other episode. There's like an actual dynamic and things that happened and ways that both characters are showcased, rather than just two brutes slamming into each other and completely missing the points of either character. But man, do they share the same flaws. Both analyses are lackluster, both have fights that just happen, and both of them even gloss over a feat before the fight, and then reveal at the very end that it's conveniently a substantial deciding factor. There are even Goliath statues in the beginning. Like, it's good that we have a better Beast versus Goliath, but that doesn't mean I want to watch it.
So much for this nighttime ritual.
It's really sad when any witty comments I can make about Smokey Bear versus McGruff the Crime Dog are second to death battle written Deadpool.
I mean, that's the year you pit a dog in a trench coat against a goddamn bear. What did you think would happen?
Ah, man. Well, if anything else, the analysis portions are pretty solid. They have fun visual gags and jokes like the bear pun counter. I like it when Death Battle lets loose like this every now and again, as the nature of their research and writing clashing with the international TikTok trend Cocaine and Crack by McGruff the Crime Dog makes it fun. If the analyses are good, surely the fight is... Okay, this is the first-hand animated death battle, and all things considered, they did well with that. But, my god, the analyses were fun, but they ended off on a pretty shocking note when they pointed out McGruff doesn't actually do anything during his time stop. Poor Ginny. I mean, they still clarify that he's a genuine help, but you can tell this one factoid was the driving force behind the entire animation, and in that aspect, they went overboard. McGruff is depicted as a careless idiot more than someone who wants to help those in need, and that can work as like a throwaway gag during the animation, but not being the main reason why they're duking it out. I mean, you could argue that bear fighting and forest fires are outside of areas of expertise, but really? Smokey's in character for protecting the forest the entire time, so why not have a scene where their scuffle ends up at a campsite, and his giant bear angry appearance puts everybody in a panic, but McGruff puts them at ease and gets them to safety. That could do so much to make up for how horrifically outclassed McGruff is as a fighter, by attempting to show how much more immediately useful he can be to the people, and maybe knock Smokey down a peg in the process to make it even. But no, he's only portrayed as a useless dick, and before anything heartfelt can happen, he dies. Not helped by this being another short fight where nothing happens with some of the most obnoxious cartoon sound design in the show's history. It's a shame. I remember liking this when it first came out, but over time it just kind of soured on me more and more, with them taking the one joke they had a little too far, and just kind of wound up being the season's biggest disappointment for me. Rest in peace, fellas. Or at least that's what I thought at first, but man, after rewatching Lara Croft versus Nathan Drake, this is a close race. You know the drill, mediocre analysis, Boomstick makes a funny comment about Lara's tits. Yeah, you don't need me to tell you that. But did you also know that this just so happens to be the most controversial episode this season? Well, now's a good time as any to clarify that when I say a death battle episode is controversial, it usually boils down to the result being, well, let's just say highly disagreeable. If you want a broader idea, just look at the like to dislike ratio and you'll see that something's off. But of all the episodes, no, not the one that featured two of the most prolific protagonists in all of media, let alone an anime, or even the one where a Sonic character could lose, because I mean, well, maybe you could tie that back to the fanbase's vitriolic history. No, Lara Croft versus Nathan Drake was the one to do it. How did they accomplish that? Well, it was how the fight ended that must have set a lot of people off, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. What about the rest of the battle? Well, on paper, this could have been fantastic. Lara's sternness, yet agile combat, bouncing off Nate's charisma, yet rigid fighting style, the premise centered around them trying to nab some treasure, the whole fight progressing from fighting in the temple, then a chase sequence, then fighting on a runaway doom buggy, and then Nate trying to escape with the treasure only to have his luck run out at the very end? I mean, it's got some pretty nice cinematography too, especially the slow-mo shot of them jumping over the gap over the collapsing temple. These are awesome ideas, and they amount to one of the clumsiest animations I've seen yet. It's like the pieces are there, but all they do is just exist. They don't really work well with each other or transition as smoothly. For one, dear God, Lara. Not only could she have killed Nate at like any point, but she comes off as a reckless idiot. She reprimands Nate for shooting the chalice off the pedestal when her bullets were making contact, and later she even tries to swipe him with it. What are you doing? But hey, maybe you can afford to be a little full of yourself if you can go from being near the bottom of a pit with only one climbing pick to suddenly catching up with Nate's Jeep on a random motorcycle well after he escaped from the already collapsed temple in a matter of seconds. But hey, it's only fair that Nate would also use his magical escape artistry to go from being crashed into a boulder to already flying away in a helicopter with the chalice somehow in his possession. I liked them calling back to the time Lara destroyed a helicopter, but comparing their explanation of it to just shattering it like a Hulk vs. Doomsday building is really funny to me. And yeah, the death kind of rustled one Jimmy too many. I mean, they explicitly bring up that helicopter feat in the analysis in considerable detail too, so it's something she can do. Nate dying to the helicopter blades is pretty okay. I mean, it's good for showing that Nate's luck has run out. Maybe it's also controversial because Nate lost due to his luck running out, but they also go over how Lara totally outclasses Nate in stats. I understand the faults of the ending, but it's not as bad as everyone made it out to be, which is shocking to me considering how the rest of the animation was. Well, heck, maybe this is the disappointment of the season, because at least I liked all the ideas and thought they could have been good with a little more polish. I would not hold as much hope if you gave me an unbiased summary of Smokey vs. McGruff. To think that this was another delayed episode, who knows how that version would have looked like. Okay, anything else? The RoosterTeeth version used the old visuals and went through like 5 different thumbnail revisions. I swear that's interesting. Moving on. If there's anything that Android 18 versus Captain Marvel has in common with me, man, we sure are real. The most exciting thing this episode has going for it is that there actually were a handful of controversies surrounding it, mainly with how 18 can absorb energy and miscalculating her speed. But it turns out the energy absorption thing isn't as much of a deal breaker, and she's actually way faster than their original calculations, so I don't care. Okay, that might be a little too harsh because there's at least something to like about the fight. It starts off with the speedy Heckery that we all know and love with Dragon Ball, and it has some nice bits of choreography, like 18 using her cum speed trail to get the jump on Marvel, both of them falling at the same time as each other, doing a kicky thing and then getting right back up, and 18 throwing Captain Marvel by her hair and then her getting reprimanded with this silly animation. I kind of like that. But that's pretty much it. It goes further downhill when Binary's at play. First off, I don't like how she looks. I get what they were going for, but it more resembles Sweet Tooth's bald head with a flame on top rather than it being fire hair. I guess 18 getting bonked by some rocks is also somewhat funny and puts her on even ground after what happened with Marvel. But why does she feel the need to destroy a giant rock when she can just, like, move out of the way? I don't know. The Destructo Disc, you know, the ability that's designed to cut through anything and just trails off, it just dissipates on contact. Cool. I mean, I guess they wanted to break away from the action somewhat, but with rocks, okay. And then 18 does her best booster gold impression and then just kills Binary. Alright, great. Ignoring how she already took blows to the head previously, it's another very abrupt death that doesn't give time to sink in. That's awesome. And then she just leaves the Dragon Ball behind when that was her whole reason for being here. My expectations going back in were low, but Jesus Christ. It's bizarre. I think I like Lucario versus Renamon more than most people, but if this is the highest placement I can justify it being on here, we're in trouble. Would you believe me if I said the analyses were actually really, really good? Pranked! Yeah, it's very average, but 2 things stood out to me. For one, they compare Lucario to Goku, but don't go on to say they share the same voice actor sometimes. Nice. And 2, they show whatever this is. I didn't need to see that, but thanks anyway, guys. As for the fight, I mean, I think it's good. It starts off nicely with Lucario blitzing the heck out of Renamon. She gets some pretty cool, albeit slow combos. Lucario rushing past the Diamond Storm to land a sick Bone Rush combo, and the death is brutal. My god, the impact of the blow with that gurgling sound too. Ugh. But what I just described was literally the entire fight. The beginning and end were very good, but what little there is in between is hardly noticeable, and even the crew recognized it as a very straightforward episode. You know, I kind of appreciate that. It doesn't waste a lot of time, but it also feels like a very run-of-the-mill episode that you could probably convince someone who's never seen Death Battle that this is like a late season 1, early season 2 episode. But I can't bring myself to dislike it, at least not too much. And the few things in the fight that stick out as good are really good anyway. Also, extremely close battle and 56,000 PSI versus 6,000 PSI? Maybe for Death Battle standards it was close, but for Word standards, nah, not quite. Oh well. Natsu vs. Ace was very, very mid on my first watch, but fast forward to now and it grew on me. Not the prize holder for the surprise of the season, just wait on that, but still. Natsu's analysis had another boomstick dad joke, thanks, but a good abrupt ending joke, so thanks again. Ace's section was also pretty okay, but they gave a fat spoiler about it, and while they did give a warning, A, I think they should have given the option to skip it or something like that, and B, apparently Natsu's backstory was also a fat spoiler, at least the anime didn't cover it at the time of the upload, and there was no warning there, eek, oh no. The fight has some really cool aspects and some really quirky aspects. Of all the things for Ace to steal, he took a singular chicken leg and even ate the bone? Bastard. But for real, I mostly like the art direction they took with this. With Natsu and Ace constantly hurling fire at each other, it excuses the high saturation unlike some of the fights already covered. It led to some pretty sick visuals like the silhouette fighting too. I said mostly because they fill in these pixelized close-ups where they're either hand-drawn or just really bit-crushed anime gifs. There are like 3 good close-ups and 1 fantastic shot at the very end, but I have to hand it to them. They do distract and take me out of the experience. The action is mostly solid, but it ramps up after their fire fist clash. They get tired from it, the music stops to sell the impact of the fiery doll, the sheer shock on Ace's face, and the line delivery when Natsu starts eating it, only for him to power through Ace's Flame Emperor and to have a plan to force through his fire form, all leading to the gruesomely awesome shot of Ace's face melting. Most of the episode almost put me to sleep, but it turned itself around big time, though it also led to a confusing conclusion as they left out the discovery of fire conducting electricity in the first member's commentary. That and the other noticeable issues I pointed out kind of dragged the episode down overall, but at least they didn't do too many obvious fire puns. They at least had the courtesy to wait till the episode after that to put me to sleep. Thor vs. Wonder Woman is a matchup that I couldn't give the tiniest little heck over, but man, if there's a better contender for most dicked over episode of the series. Okay, as I said in an earlier season ranking, you can't be a content creator if anything works properly.
Don't tell me I have to cut Batman vs. Iron Man's 40-minute sex scene!
Last minute rendering errors. Awesome! Such a shame too, since with more polish and adding in some of those sick scenes that had to be cut, this could have been one of Torrian's best animations, and I feel awful for it just barely making it to the second half of the list. But it is what it is. And unfortunately, you can tell they had to make do because some of these visuals just straight up don't look great. What with there being no textures on Thor and Wonder Woman in the tornado fight, and the explosions literally just being orange circles. However, I can let shoddy visuals aside if the core content is fun enough in most circumstances. Trust me, I play video games too, I get it. And in that aspect, man, do I feel like I enjoy this fight more than most people. There are just a ton of really cool moments. As unpolished as the tornado scene is, I'm just thankful we got incredible back and forth between the two in a friggin' tornado to begin with. They even destroy the moon, and that shot of Thor watching the impact of their fight as Diana just continues rushing towards him, like, if there's anything this fight accomplishes, it's the spectacality of it. This really does feel like two gods, or at the very least godlike beings, clashing together, and the destruction is not only impactful, but really sick. But remember when I said I felt bad for putting this fight this low? I'll be frank, even if this was the most polished masterpiece Torrian and the Death Battle team intended for it to be, it still has its fair share of flaws, and I doubt the placement would have been astronomically higher for it, mainly the beginning and end. Thor just inexplicably shows up to Themyscira, and after Diana tries to shoo him off, he just decides to pick a fight with a woman he's never met. I guess misogyny's on the plate tonight, fellas. And then there's that death. On average, most of the deaths of the season are pretty good, but this is just on a new level of comically terrible. Thor does his berserker thingy, and Diana breaks him out of it by hitting him with his own hammer. Okay, that's at least a good setup. Too bad it just hard cuts to Thor in a different pose with no glowy thing, and Diana just so happened to remove her gauntlets, be right behind Thor, and stab him through the mouth in 2 seconds. Like, okay. At least Thor's rundown is good, and I shouldn't be surprised that Diana's was better than her first episode. Still though, the fact that this is Diana's best episode so far is really funny and sad. Scrooge McDuck versus Shovel Knight is good by default because it's a gag match that doesn't lean too much on how funny and gaggy it is, nor does it center around boomstick dickery. Analysis could have been better, but they could have been worse. I like how they pointed out Scrooge's boomer history without making any cringe comments and boomstick's rake fiasco. Though they talk about Shovel Knight not being intelligent, and the main reason for that is giving up chivalry entirely because he just assumed his girlfriend was dead, which, I mean, okay, she was kind of gone for a little bit, I don't think you can blame him. Anyways, dear Christ, the art direction for this fight is so good. Sure, it can be illegible with frantic camera movements, and the first few backgrounds have that same black outlining thing that the characters do, but making the fight purely 8-bit fits these two to a T. As much as I wish they do this more often, it does allow this episode to stand out more because of it, so I can't be too fussed, especially when they could have easily found some overly pixelated Mugen sprites or something, dear god. That said, everything before the end is kind of a mixed bag. I like the dynamic of someone breaking into a man's home, and one of the combatants' primary methods of attack is using said home for defense, but man, they mix it all up. I would expect Scrooge to be the greedy fuck to find some treasure, and Shovel Knight would have to be the one to have some dignity to prevent it from falling to some guy's crusty hands, not the other way around. I like some of the interactions they have with Scrooge's home decor and Shovel Knight's relics, but part of me wishes they relied a little more on Scrooge's pure stats as well as showcase a few more of Shovel Knight's relics. Like, he doesn't even use the horn, invisibility, or even the eye cores that they bring up the analysis. Also, for some reason, they repeat the exact same routine of Shovel Knight combo, leading to Scrooge huffing and puffing, down to the same sound effect each and every time. Like, okay? After they remind us of the guns we literally heard about 13 minutes ago, it leads to a hilariously gruesome death. Not only is it a complete tonal shift in the best way possible, with a man getting decapitated backed by happy, fun, ducky music, but it also directly highlights one of their primary connections of Pogo Heckery too. Overall, it's a mixed bag, but the good outweighs the bad, and the visuals and the goofy matchup do more than enough for it to stand out. Now, if only we could get another indie game character on Death Battle. I have my ideas. Oh, you know it's gonna be fun when I have to open up a segment with a classic, "Am I the only one?" phrase, but I honestly think Naruto versus Ichigo's timing in the Death Battle catalog is weird. I'd expect a huge anime rivalry like this to be done early in the show, since it's an easy matchup for content to get out the door. I could also see them holding it off for a much later season after more production refinement, like if they were able to do a whole season of highly requested fights, or one with important connections in history to Death Battle itself. You know, speaking hypothetically. But no, they just decided to do it one day. Not to say anything about the other rivalries this season, but this one always felt so hilariously and bombastically larger than most episodes they've done so far. It almost sticks out like a sore thumb in a way. No? Is that just a me thing? Alright, anyways, the analysis and conclusion were very detailed, as I would hope, considering who we're dealing with, but it does kind of sacrifice its comedy a little. I mean, I guess that's fine, but this also means its best joke involves 54 little boys. These times are dire. Also, looking back at this now, I just realized Boomstick mourns his mother like she's dead. Sure. As for the fight, it's impressive, but funny enough, not for the actual fighting in my opinion. It's so weird because, of course, I look forward to the battle of the death battle, but for Naruto versus Ichigo, I don't really care all that much for it. The Mugetsu at the end is incredible with how it just halts the entire fight with the silence and the tension and all that, but most of the reasons I don't care too much can be traced back to how this fight looks. I get the warm filter since both characters are orange or something, but the saturation's a bit too high for my liking, and all the flashing lights, use of other filters, and inverting colors makes the shots way more confusing than they need to be. Where the animation really shines at is the characterization of Naruto's gung-ho fighting style and Ichigo's ridiculous refusal to stay down. They both get moments to shine and bounce off each other, like Naruto randomly using the sexy jutsu in a last-second attempt to halt Ichigo's efforts, only for him to not have any of it, or Ichigo being beaten and bloodied by a giant Kurama avatar and him not even remotely caring. That's not to mention both of their phenomenal voice performances. They somehow pulled off that haunting roar from Ichigo and made Believe It sound legitimately cool. How? I mean, even stripped of all his powers, Ichigo knows he's going to die, yet still goes down swinging, and we get a phenomenal hand-drawn death on top of that. Then Naruto asked who he was and didn't even look like he broke a sweat. I get that Naruto can be stupid sometimes, but come on, man, have a little respect for the man that you just slaughtered. Again, it's bizarre how the actual fighting is just fine with some peaks and valleys, and the characterization is phenomenal. And then again, I don't think I would like it any more if the inverse were at play. Sometimes I just want to watch these fights for the characters, not some man with a cape flying around and being capey. When I began planning these death battle rankings, one of my biggest worries was whether or not most of my placements would hold up over time. I mean, nowadays I don't really care as much, but now it's more interesting to think about than anything. The most notable example I can think of was when I placed Starscream vs. Rainbow Dash in the top 10 of the Season 1 ranking. Yeah, good one. I bring this up now because this might be another example, but screw it, that's future Ty's problem. Present Ty's problem is justifying putting Metal Sonic vs. Zero in this season's top 5. The analysis is okay as usual. The Olympic feat joke was pretty funny, blah blah blah, who cares? It's not like it takes up 70% of the episode's content or anything. Let's talk about this animation though. Oh boy, I've always wanted to put my garbage takes on the line.
Metal Sonic vs. Zero has gotten lambasted for those goofy 3D inserts and that funny sound design. Yeah, I bet some of you have been looking forward to hearing me tear into it regardless of where I place it. What kind of idiot would dare try to convince his audience that these aspects that would normally be bad in any circumstance actually work to the animation's favor in some kind of weird twisted way? I'm not perfect.
There is no other way I can say this, but I'm just gonna get right to it. The visual and audio decisions here really don't bother me, and trying to put this into a reasonable justification just makes me wake up in a cold sweat at night. I don't know, in a weird way, what I mainly feel isn't annoyance, it's nostalgia. When I think of Metal Sonic and Zero, my mind jumps straight into that Sonic OVA and classic SNES Mega Man gaming, respectively. Both forms of media are decades old. They do not have the technical fidelities we have to this day, and I can't help but see that here too. I mean, sure, it's a sprite fight in 2017. Of course they have the means for modern sprite funny, fun, but I don't know. My interpretation of it has never not reminded me of that classic era of media, and I can't help but feel that it was intentional. It doesn't have to have a CRT filter or crunchy audio to be retro. Sometimes it can do just subtle things to trick your brain, and I think it works. I'm likely alone on this, and I'm not asking anyone to agree or even change your opinion to match mine. It's all subjective, and we're here to have fun, right? In any rate, I can at least say they use a ton of abilities against each other. They both have unique ways of showcasing speed, and the death is pretty friggin' cool. It's a rare instance of a character powering down to get the advantage over the opponent, and the use of mostly silence and color correction made it work way more. But wait, hang on. Metal Overlord gets cut right in half down the middle, and Metal Sonic's head is still intact. Never mind. Garbage episode. Bad. Of all the episodes to be the finale for Season 4, they picked Sephiroth versus Virgil? Okay, I mean, it was a popular matchup at the time, and Sephiroth is a finale-worthy character, but as for Virgil? I mean, if you ask me now, then absolutely yes. He's got that mass appeal and present in the gaming zeitgeist, but not really as much in 2017, not gonna lie, Wiz. I could be wrong about this, but I don't think it was that big of a rivalry, especially not long before that we had Naruto versus Ichigo. And I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty big and finale-worthy in a vacuum. Could it be because Deadpool vs. Pinkie Pie poisoned the well for sprite-based season finales? I don't want to answer that. But anyway, this is still a good finale. The analysis had some good jokes, and I liked how they broke down all the mechanics of Supernova. We don't really get that level of detail over one attack very often, and how Supernova works is already contentious, so it's pretty good stuff, I think. Now for the fight. Let's get the negatives out of the way. Virgil's model is quite thick with a few C's at points. There's this one bit with the illusions where the swords clash, then Yamato phases through them, and then it's tangible again, sure. It's also a little disappointing they don't use safer Sephiroth, but there aren't any good models for it as far as I wear, and you know what? Imagine making this from scratch, dear God. But, yeah, that's about it. This fight's pretty amazing. It pulls off the stylish choreography of Devil May Cry while still keeping some of the magical spectacles of Final Fantasy, and it leads to some pretty fun interactions. They both start duking it out, then Sephiroth uses his illusions and strategic mind to get the upper hand, leading to Virgil to use his power at its most ferocious, and they progress the absurdity very naturally. Small thing, I love how Boomstick joked about how Street Fighter inspires Virgil's Beowulf moves, and then later in the fight he does Chun-Li's Hoyokusen. Come on, that's fun! It culminates in the amazing Supernova reveal, even using the Final Fantasy UI not just as a visual quirk, but shows off Virgil's insane healing factor. Then Virgil gets an incredible moment to give it his all to escape the Supernova, like, oh my goodness gracious, look at him go! And then he dies. I like the Advent Children shot, but I wish there was a moment of silence to make Virgil think he's safe, and I wish we had a little more time after the death to sink in, but beggars can't be choosers. I also like the voice acting. Mark Soskine's performance as Virgil may not be as raspy as I would want, but it definitely captures his stern, level head very well, so I think it's a good performance overall. But Kamran Nikad's Sephiroth stole the show. If there's ever just a voice that communicates someone's dominating presence, I don't know what else it could be. I wonder what else he did for the show.
Hello? That's a mine.
You know, I want to act surprised, but no, that makes sense.
Okay, let me set something straight here. I've gotten a lot of comments about this, and apparently there's been some confusion involved about what was going to be the season 3 finale. You know, I said it was going to be Lara versus Nate, and I went off of those old Road to 100 blogs. But apparently, this huge army of people decided to just waltz on in and say, yeah, no, actually, that's not correct, so clearly this matters to somebody, I guess. Apparently, the season 3 finale was going to be Power Rangers versus Voltron. You know, what I'm going to talk about in like 2 seconds. And apparently, this was confirmed on the Death Battle cast. I don't know which episode it was, though. Thanks, fandom. Can we, just as a collective nobody, just agree that the Death Battle Season 3 finale could have been multiple things?
Anyways, I like how the analysis goes over the pilots too, as well as their stories and their mechs and all that funny stuff. It gives more additional story context, and that's always good. I kind of wish they were used more in the fight though. I mean, I get why, it'd make the animation feel more bloated overall, but most of them have about like, what, 3 one-liners in total? So the only ones getting any attention are the leaders and Pidge. Then again, when the Power Rangers dress like the Polygon team from Smash Brothers, and the Voltron pilots look like melting Sims models, I'll take what's here, but not for a single second longer. But you saw that thumbnail, and you know what you want to see when you click on that, and oh boy, this is like Hulk versus Doomsday, but again, and I mean that in the nicest, gushiest way I can. Not as much destruction, granted, but they certainly pull identical tricks with the loud sound effects and ripping out chunks of land whenever they breathe on each other, Megazord's towering presence, Voltron flipping and dipping about, and both posturing all over the screen. I didn't grow up too much with either of these shows, but with how well all the pieces are played, I almost regret that. This fight packs all the goods. Hand-to-hand, sword combat, projectile spam, and the raw absurdity of each category. The most significant accomplishment of the episode is a bone-chilling climax where Voltron throws everything it has at the Megazord just to buy time to nab the sword for the amazing kill shot. And all of it is frontlined by one single vocal delivery. And of all the people to give us the rawest line delivery in the whole episode, it was the mastermind that gave us Mario is Mental. Is there anything Death Battle can't do? Make Venom VS Bane worth a damn? That's what! Shredder vs. Silver Samurai is my pick for the surprise of Season 4, and I really wanted it to top the list so severely, but, well, we'll get into why in a bit, but I'm not gonna sell this episode short for a second. Okay, I grew up on TMNT, and seeing Shredder in one of my favorite shows was a very good pop-off moment for a DigitalTy, and they put him against a Marvel character I don't know or care all too much, and that is something. Unfortunately, while good, the analyses do have their flaws and other weird quirks. At least Shredder's does. They go over his origins like, oh, some say he was this and others say he was this other origin from a completely separate incarnation. And then they discuss a different origin story like it's its main one. Like, okay. But you know what? Any rundown that makes a joke about cracking open a cold one with the boys and the many goofy times Shredder's been defeated or humiliated is a fun time, so I can't be mad. The setup for the fight is also kind of lame. Gee, Harada, where'd you learn lumberjacking, you stupid idiot? But other than that, no, I got nothing. This fight is almost perfect. The central aspect is deciding who would kill who first, and that's translated over in the fight super well. Shredder gets like one combo at the beginning and one close to the finale, and then he gets stabbed later, but other than that, the two don't really land any hits on each other. And sure, I've complained about that before in worse animations, but the difference is that they're both like doing things, and cool sword clashing and sword dodging things at that. Shredder immediately putting pressure on Harada in the beginning, Harada doing a much better and more awesome lumberjacking feat, the smoke ball sequence, and they both do a bunch of flippy dippy teleporting nonsense and try to get at each other while I'm just like sitting on the edge of my seat here. And Harada getting a significant blow by seeing Shredder and his sword's reflection is just, that's really cool. And once Super Shredder comes to party with no boys, they clash electricity and tachyon power to set the forest ablaze, and this menacing shot of Shredder approaching Harada, badass alert, and he gets to land the most amazing and brutal kill in any sprite fight. He chops off Harada's arm and launches the sword back in his face, dangling eyeball and all, and the music stops too, and so all you hear is the background fire while he decapitates Harada and crushes his head like a grape. They made playtime is over sound intimidating, my god. I also love the conclusion where they go over Shredder's close but noticeable advantage, only to say, nah, Super Shredder can just beat the shit out of him, and that's funny to me. So yeah, if you can't tell, I'm biased and I love Shredder, and I'm really happy he won, and I tried to make this my #1 pick, but there are still issues, and they are noticeable, so I must do the boring thing and hold myself accountable. And to be fair, if this episode had to be second to anything, I'm okay that it lost to my #1 pick because, ooh, it's a doozy. I tried. I really wanted Shredder vs. Silver Samurai to top the list. I really did. However, as high as my biases may lead me, and as much as I enjoy a nice hot take every now and again, I value my honesty more when it comes to media discussion, regardless of what temperature my opinions are. It's not as basic as putting Goku vs. Superman at the top of my Season 1 ranking, but I don't care, dude! Balrog vs. TJ combo is a breathtaking episode. The analyses are near flawless, with a couple sleeper jokes. Still, it blends good jokes, each character's backgrounds, powers, feats, and stories, even applying them to real-world boxing fundamentals, and making each talking point flow very smoothly. Once again, it's the best kind of analysis, since part of the charm of Death Battle is learning about them as characters, not just what they can do. But man, looking at this fight again, yeah, honestly, I feel really stupid for not putting this at the top initially. Downsides, well, both their models don't match up well. Balrog's model in particular has noticeable clipping, and the wholly blacked out ruby silhouetted background audience. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And even then, that's the most minor give-a-heck worthy complaints I can give to even worse episodes. The fight being an in-universe boxing match does many things for it, and all of them give me many wonderful, happy feelings. You'd think a conflict between two dudes that punch a bunch would get stale, but clearly, you don't watch boxing. I don't watch boxing, and even I think my theoretical point that I just made up on the fly to lead into how they take into account movement, distance, where to hit, when to hit, how hard to hit, and why to hit is a stupid point to make. So I'm not gonna do it. There's also an apparent structure to it. Both enter, round 1, break, round 2, Balrog does a big no-no, and then they fight to the death. However, it feels real? Is that the word I want to use in the same animation where Balrog gets decapitated by a punch? Maybe not, but any narrative decisions made, regardless of simplicity, does wonders to immerse yourself in the experience. And a real-life sport certainly helps. When they start the fight, the majority of the dialogue is by announcer commentary, as if you're actually spectating a boxing match. But after Balrog causes a little mischief and they start busting out their big boy supers and other illegal moves for boxing, the announcer commentary takes a backseat, further cementing that they're no longer fighting as an official match. And I think that's a very small but very impactful little detail that helps to shift the focus on what the characters think and feel going forward. Back to Rise from Killer Instinct being the main track is like the only choice. And funnily enough, this is the last episode where they put all the music from the source material before shifting to non-copyrighted stuff. I said my take in the past. I get why they do it. And yeah, I do miss it. But I'm more than okay with this being the last episode to do it. But how can I talk about this episode without mentioning TJ's amazing comeback? Look, I'm just gonna say it, and I don't know if you're gonna like it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. This is a better comeback than Iron Man vs. Lex Luthor. Now, TJ's last line doesn't come close to being close to surpassing Tony's line, but let's be honest, it's also Tony Stark. Him losing power is like getting a paper cut. You know he's gonna be fine. Really, it boils down to extremities, where the pompous dickhead in the lead is more pompous and dickheadedly, and the underdog is way further behind. When taking into account the hype value and being able to root for someone to win, yeah, no, I'm sorry, TJ has him beat. The blood-pumping chorus of Back to Rise playing again, the swoosh maneuver into breaking Balrog's arm, the first-person shots. It's one of the most satisfying beatdowns Death Battle has ever written. The final kill is so gruesome and over the top, and I love it. And it pulled off the Herculean task of them saying that it was an extremely close match, and it actually was. And hey, the episode after that was indeed Shredder vs. Silver Samurai, so I guess I get the last laugh, baby.
And that's Death Battle Season 4. It is better than Season 3.
It's funny, I think Season 3 has some higher high points than Season 4, but overall, this one is better consistently, in my opinion. Sure, we've had some sleepers, but come on, what would any show be without those? Let's be real. Plus, comparing the average episodes between Seasons 3 and 4, I take these any day of the week. The positives are just more memorable and more fun than that last season, and the good stuff is still good as always. I can't complain. Wow, I usually have a lot more to say in these conclusion segments, but no. I guess that's another Death Battle ranking for the history books, boys.
Thanks a bunch for watching, gamers. To think I'm now halfway done with these Death Battle rankings, at least as of right now, while Season 9's still going on. Fingers crossed. I was almost taken aback by how the Death Battle community just found these videos. I mean, normally I just release it and then do something else. I don't even share my content around. I probably should, but I don't. Sometimes I find myself wondering just how things are gonna look whenever I'm done with the Death Battle rankings. But then I did the Smash video, and that got better immediate analytics than the rest of the Death Battle rankings I've done so far. I don't know how that happened, but, I mean, I'll say it again, this time, for real. Thank you, legit. Wow, I said this conclusion was gonna be short, and then here I am just being an idiot on camera for like over half the duration. In fact, I didn't even like write an intro skit for this. I just couldn't think of anything, and so I decided for once to just not stretch myself thin on that one. So, I mean, I guess to compensate, I can just cut